if there's more of a collaborative thing, then that collaborative approach, sorry,
yes.
he just doesn't know what he's trying to say. Then that's going to win better.
But it makes sense, sort of like compromise and understanding.
Yeah.
The nuclear power plants, for example, are an example of that, where everybody's got this NIMBY thing about having a power plant, especially in a place like Cape St. Francis on the south coast.
Yes.
And they will just beat each other to death to not have it there.
Yeah.
Without trying to understand the bigger picture. And why they've considered that particular location. And you can say the similar thing with this whole fracking thing. Everybody's having this knee-jerk reaction at the moment because there's this company that's got a prospecting right of hundreds of thousands of, not hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of kilometers of space to go and prospect. But people don't understand what prospecting is.
No.
So they immediately think now suddenly they're actually going to be drilling holes everywhere, sucking gas out, sucking all sorts of things out, and the water's going to get polluted, and people are going to die, and animals are going to, and it's just prospecting.
Yeah, right.
They don't understand, so they have this knee-jerk reaction to these things. And yes, there's definite grounds, but at this point it's not the time to fight your case, because what it does is it shows you up as being uninformed and naive. Whereas if you participate in the prospecting, understand what they're doing, see the results of what their prospecting shows, and then you take your case forward from there. But a lot of these guys will just immediately off the cuff just fight you with no information other than their emotion.
Yeah, which is then tricky because that's, like you say, affect their reputation.
And the problem is trying to, in an EIA process, is because it's not an environmental thing, it's a social thing, is understand people's emotions and trying to, as an ecological scientist, trying to write up somebody's emotions, and you're always going to get it wrong.
Yeah. Well, and that's the tricky thing often with this stuff, I think, is you've kind of got two completely separate conversations going on. You've got one which is a logical one and one which is an emotional one, and you can't. If you get the two confused, then often that's where the conflict seems to arise. If someone feels they've been heard and all that kind of stuff, they've had an impact on the process, and sometimes that's actually kind of half what they wanted to.
The strategy I took with this, as an example, the Sani Pass one, was that, obviously it's an internationally recognized pass. It has huge amount of interest around the world. It got advertising notified in a number of different international magazines. And the only way I could give it some punch was to take its biggest opposers and turn them into my specialists.
Right.
So the birding fraternity, I took their key person and I made him the bird specialist for the project. The vegetation and floral person, Elsa Puli, you've heard of Elsa Puli?
Yeah.
She became the floral specialist. And the moment they get involved and they start to understand the dynamics and the engineering, they change their tune straight away, and they start to become proponents of the project and push it. And they go back to their guys, and I remember being in a public meeting where the guys were bitching and moaning, and this one particular man who'd been the first meeting, he says, I will not let you do this ever. And then he became a specialist. Then at the meeting, when others were objecting, he said, listen, I'm not listening to what's going on here. I understand.
Yeah.
So if you can turn the biggest opposers into people who work with you, then you
into your ambassadors, essentially. Sure, that's very clever. It's a very canny move.
Yeah, but you have to talk to somebody. You go to a community like St. Francis Bay, and they're obviously all against the nuclear power plant. You need to take some key people out of that community and get them involved and get them into your engineering meetings and your technical meetings with it, and make them understand.
Yeah. How interesting. And that really is a how can I even put it? Like, that's a very social game. It's a very political maneuver.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to, in the Sani one, trying to find a way around the community.
No, of course.
I just wanted somebody to understand and world-renowned bird specialist and you make him tell you what birds are there.
Mm. Mm. Well,
And a floral person too.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, okay. Fascinating.
So I mean, you can do the same with wind farms.
Yeah.
Whoever the community is used to support their case against wind farms in terms of birds, you say, okay, well, let me take this guy. He can bring him on our team. Let him do the assessment. Let him tell us. But then he needs to be objective. He can't play both sides of the fence now.
Oh, I see. Yeah. The independence is an important part of that position. Right.
But your project then carries weight with the community because now you've used one of their own in your project.
Have you had?
Yeah, and then he has the ability in that project to be able to talk directly to the applicant and say, but this is not going to work and for this and this reason. And you might butt heads, but both parties need to understand each other's position.
How interesting. And have you ever had that backfire? What's that?
I haven't, because I haven't done that too many times. I haven't had a project of that significance to have the need to do that.
Okay.
But it worked very well for Simon. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's also slightly the kind of the ideal of the system, really, isn't it? That the people who have the opinion and standing get their voices heard and integrated into the process. That's kind of best practice, or should be best practice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't follow any rules or guidelines to do that. It was just something that was very clear to me. I had the opportunity to get the most outspoken person to swing his view and turn it out way. He might not have changed. It's a risk.
Yeah.
You might come into a project and tell you that what you're doing is crap and these birds are sensitive, but then that's fine, and the client must understand it.
And that was going to come out
So
anyway.
you move your sense of negotiation from between the project team and the community to being between the specialist and the client. And then you bounce that compromise there.
Well, you can have a much more intense conversation about it, I guess. You have to go through public process. Well, it is a public process, but it's slightly less sensations from, perhaps.
Yeah, because everybody comes in with their own agendas anyway. I mean, you could use it in any instance. Anybody who, again, in the Cape, the heritage issues are very pertinent there. So you get the most outspoken person who tells you he knows everything about the heritage of the Khoisan people, and this project's going to destroy all of it. And you say, okay, well, you come. You sit with us, and you discuss it with us, and we talk, and you do an assessment for us. And in that assessment process, he has to look at both sides of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. How interesting. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. You've been very generous today. Is there anything else? We've touched on a whole wide range of stuff. Is there anything that you think I'm missing that hasn't come up?
I guess the only last thing I can really say is that you need to be careful of who you approach and who you talk to, and maybe not be careful. You need to understand the dynamics of the different consultants. Some will be entrenched in a long road of experience in the way they do things. Others will be very young companies with very young and inexperienced people who don't have the knowledge, but they think they do. And they will run off and do stuff and attack the project from a different perspective and often do more damage than they're worth.
Right.
There are so many small consultancies, and I'm not saying that they're all bad. I'm not saying a bigger company is any better, because a lot of the small consultancies there's a tendency in KZN for the experienced people to at some point go out on their own.
Right. Yeah.
I can give you a whole bunch of people who do that, and that's great because they are there to do the work and they're happy to do it. But in the same breath, you get these young guys who work in a company for a couple of years and decide to go and start their own company and start taking on projects that they're clearly completely out of their league, and then they just stuff it up royally, and environmental fraternity then takes the flak for poor environmental